Well, lovely to see everybody again. And Alana, I think this is the first time we've done one together.
It is.
It is. And my understanding is that you've promised at least 2 attempts to have a joke with me, so we'll see how we go. Look, today's a little bit different. When we put out the feelers for today, we actually asked people what they wanted us to talk about rather than us coming up with it. And so we've got 10 priorities for your business for WHS for this year. And they're actually in the batting order of how people asked us to talk about them, which kind of blew me away because I reckon number 10 I'd have put much sooner, but hopefully we'll get to number 10 and we'll see. Perhaps not surprisingly, psychosocial health and safety is number one. And I was trying to work out how to start off getting you before you get me, which is you are clearly the queen of psychosocial safety in our business. You've done more work on it than anybody else. We'll have a good chat about that. A little bit about what's changed with the codes of practice. That's important to get right. Move into a little bit of hazard identification, incident response, consultation training. And you've dropped number 9 in, I see that. I reckon you've put that in just to make my life a little harder today, which is this famous conversation we get all the time about the role of safety professionals versus HR. I suspect you'll throw to me immediately when we get to that.
That's exactly how it's going to go.
I thought you would. And then we need to talk about working from home, which yes, I thought that might have been higher on the list. So let's see how we go. So thematically, I think if we were to try and take some overarching theme of today, it's to say, are you being proactive rather than reactive? Are you thinking ahead rather than waiting for something to happen and then responding? And if there was one theme today, I would say that's the first theme. The second thing I'll say in that is, and you might make sure I do this occasionally, I had a lot of questions about the difference between big and small business.
Yes.
And I might, at various moments, maybe just explain what I've done with my local coffee shop as a favour to my local coffee shop owner. We'll have a chat about that. And I wanted to put this sort of philosophical point right down the bottom of the slide. And that is, and having lived in corporate life, responsible for safety in a very large Australian business, you'll meet people who think safety is common sense. They don't believe there's a need for all of this safety system stuff. And then you'll probably meet a safety manager who is what I call a purist. And hopefully what you'll get out of today is that if you're a purist, you'll probably have the best looking stuff on the shelf you'll ever have. You'll have the best online stuff you can ever get. And I suspect the odds are your truck drivers or your call centre operators probably won't actually use it. And conversely, if you're one of those people who says, no, it's all just common sense, I suspect at some point in your career, somebody's going to get pretty badly hurt. You'll probably get prosecuted. And in the worst case, you might actually go to jail. But let's hope that never happens. So for us, this is really a conversation which drives philosophically a balance between getting safety right from a safety professional perspective, but also we need to be mindful that it needs to be operationally practical in what you're doing, and hopefully that flavour will come through. See if we can achieve that. Your favourite topic of the year, I was going to say psychosocial health and safety. I think we've got about 70 requests for this, so we'll start off with it. What is it?
Well, before everyone gets distracted by the colourful images on the screen, I want to say what it simply is, and that's the bottom. They're hazards that may cause psychological harm. And you agree with this simple approach to it first off, don't you, Nigel?
I do. And do you want to explain psychological harm?
How long's a piece of string?
Yeah, how long's a piece of string?
But what I want to do break down for everyone is a bit more of the technical definition, but that's what you see displayed on the slide there. So you have where these hazards are arising in your workplace, how you're going to see them right in the middle, and what they cause. So if we look first at the circles on the left, psychosocial hazards arise or relate to the way you design or manage work. So
we're going to talk more about this a little bit, as well.
So when you're setting a roster or allocating work, those decisions could potentially create high job demands. That's an example of one. The workplace interactions, you have more than one person at work. If you work remote, you surely will be talking to people or interacting in some way.
Could be interacting with your kids, mate. We'll come back to that at number 10.
That's a form of interaction that can give rise to potential harassment, bullying, etc. Hopefully not with the kids. And then work environment, plant at the workplace, your equipment, vehicles, all this stuff. This is where the hazards can arise from. But how are you going to see these? How are they going to manifest in the workplace? That's where you get that stress response. So Nigel, does everyone listening need to worry about workers being stressed?
No, well, I'm going to, you know me very well in this sense. My answer is going to be no. We wouldn't have survived as a species and evolved if we didn't actually understand how to respond to stress. We have stress in our lives. I mean, you miss the bus, we're stressed.
Yeah.
You oversleep, we're stressed. There's stress absolutely everywhere in our lives. It's not about stress per se, it's about when stress gets to a point where, for the individual, it manifests into what I would call real harm.
So let's be very clear, you don't have to eliminate stress from the workplace. That's not what this duty is all about. But what you should be aware of is that that stress response, if frequent, prolonged, severe, that's what can take a person from healthy to psychological harm, and in some quite serious cases also physical harm.
Depression, anxiety, dietary issues, lack of sleep, all of those things could be manifested. And we'll talk about a little bit later on about what we call the issue of the individual. We'll talk about that a little later on. But you're right, it's not stress per se, it's about genuine harm that arises from it. And there'll be a debate later on about how doctors diagnose that, but we'll get there.
There we have some of the common psychosocial hazards. So if you're feeling a bit stuck in this territory still, start here. These are common psychosocial hazards because they're found to be reasonably foreseeable in the majority of workplaces. It might not be in yours, but the majority.
And again, you need to be mindful that the standard test for work health and safety obligations applies to all of this. So, what is reasonably practical in the context of the workplace, be it big, small, or whatever. On the left-hand side, we've got some lovely work ones. I don't want to give the impression that those things automatically create psychosocial harm, because they won't. They're not going to. And we've got what we might delightfully call some people stuff on the right-hand side. Be very mindful of this. We've got a lot of clients who have become paranoid about this stuff, and they are creating what I describe as an eggshell culture in their workplace. And what do I mean by that? They have created an environment where they go, we do not want to hurt anybody's feelings. If we hurt somebody's feelings, that might lead to stress, and we're worried about where that takes us. And all I can say to you is that if you are creating an eggshell culture in your business, I guarantee you it'll probably be a very low performing business, and it will probably erupt at some point in a great deal of challenge about internal equity issues, and also I suspect you'll end up with a high number of claims than if you create what I would call a reasonable and values-based culture. So just be very careful about that. Now, let me ask you this question then. Do I have to get into everybody's head?
It's a good question. Now, when we looking at safety, a lot of the time you are going to be taking a much broader approach, especially with psychosocial hazards.
Do you want me to jump over?
Oh no, I think it's fine on this one, just for a little bit longer.
Okay.
Focusing on the workforce at large can be very helpful. For example, if we're looking at people working in an open plan office, looking at Bill, Bob, Jenna, one by one is not going to be too helpful, because we're trying to make a system that protects everyone. Now, exception. If I receive information about a worker that they've disclosed they have a particular condition, I have to take that information into account. If they've volunteered that information, I can't ignore it. That's when I might have to take an individual approach for that person, subject to what they're talking about.
I'm not sitting there going, to meet my psychosocial obligations, I need to make everybody happy and content. I'm sitting there going, is this a reasonable work environment for people to work in? Yes. However, I do know that Nigel sitting in the corner has just explained to me how he's going through some period of depression, and I might actually have to now be more careful about how he operates in that environment, or the environment that I've actually created for him. Would that be a reasonable way of putting it?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Now, early days around the country, and different bits of the country are doing different things. So, in a snapshot, where are we up to?
We were in the state of flux for a while, but everything's more or less settled.
Right.
If we put Victoria, just put Victoria to the side for a second.
I wish we could sometimes, but that's okay. That's okay.
So everywhere but Victoria, give them time, have now addressed psychosocial hazards in regulations and in codes of practice. So there's firm, authoritative guidance on what you need to do in your risk management in this space.
Yep.
Consistent theme across all of them is you now have to have broader considerations. We call them the additional considerations, and we'll turn to them in a moment.
Okay. And what's going on in Victoria?
Victoria have been developing their regulations.
It's going to be worse than everybody else?
It looked like it at one point, but what we're going to get is, so I'm a bit hesitant because we don't have the official draft yet. So earlier drafts suggest that we're going to see a new hierarchy of controls for psychological, psychosocial hazards.
Right.
Which might bring some structure to the additional considerations we're going to talk about, but it's not going to be so different and new or unimaginable. It will just be a little bit of a different framing, but being Victoria, there will likely be some extra penalties chucked in as well.
Yeah, being Victoria. I love that. Key points. So what's changed?
So key thing you need to take away today, there's now regulations regarding psychosocial hazards.
So if you're not dealing with it,
you're in trouble.
You're in trouble, start dealing with it.
Yes.
And if you don't know where to start, give us a call.
Yep.
Or give you a call, I should say. That'd be the way to do it.
Additional considerations, very important. We're going to turn to it next because if you fail to incorporate this into your risk management, you're not compliant. It's that simple. Here we are, the additional wonderful considerations. So what you now need to do when you're approaching psychosocial hazards, psychological health and safety, we don't want you to just be thinking, what's one control measure to just cover this up? I have employee assistance program. That's good enough. We have some wellbeing initiatives that's targeting psychological health. You need to move out of that space.
Yep.
What these additional considerations are pointing you to is to think more broadly. So let's look at an example. So we mentioned working an open plan. I think that's a good one to start with.
Drives me insane.
Psychosocial hazard. I see. I'm listening. I'm listening to what you're saying. Now, if you have an open plan in your business, so that's the layout of the work environment, and that will have a reaction to that. The interactions are now probably much closer with everyone. The hazard that can arise in that scenario is high job demands on the people working in that environment, and also some lack of job control, because you may have very loud colleagues on either side of you, and that can add to that stress. So when I'm thinking about, okay, what am I going to do about this situation to avoid workers getting psychological harm? I'll go through these factors. Well, let's look at one of them. The layout of the workplace. Well, we have a lease. I can't exactly erect walls and create silos, so that's something I can't do there. But we do have some little offices to the side on our floor, so maybe we could allocate that for people to use at different points in time. Plant substances and structures. Is there some equipment we could provide our workers to help them here? Maybe some noise cancelling
headphones, so we could all work in open plan and never talk to each other. It'd be a brilliant idea.
That interaction with other psychosocial hazards, because this is
who we sit people next to will be another one.
Yes, of course. And this is where I want to give some emphasis to the interaction, because it's a bit unique with psychosocial hazards. They interact and create more. So if I'm in a high state of stress from my high job demands, and then suddenly I'm put next to a bunch of people in open plan that are talking non-stop, this can likely give rise to some conflict between us. And so if we just ignore it, we'll find that other hazards can start to pop up in the workplace.
And the great challenge of all of this is what I might call the gradient at which the risk is a problem. Because you're right, I might not be a lover of working in open plan, but I get by.
Yeah.
At some point, you actually have to be observant to understand that I've perhaps crossed a line where actually this has moved from not okay to I might actually have a problem, or the environment might be creating a problem. And I suspect the problem is this. Everybody out there would love us to go, that happens when you get to X. And the problem you've got is that's always going to be contextual. It's going to be looking at the situation, understanding what's going on. So I think Alana's issues about the additional considerations are you really need to have a broad sense of your risk management analysis when you've got people in the workplace. We'll talk about working from home later on. Now, if I'm a small business, I'm going to be thinking about these things again, but perhaps not with the degree of rigour, the degree of formality, but I'm still going to be thinking about these things.
That's right. The key, you're not dictated how you have to approach this consideration. The key thing is that you are. And note that it's relevant factors. A lot of these won't always be relevant. Work as accommodation, rarely going to be relevant, but when it is, we want to make sure we're talking about it.
All right. So not one size fits all. Stronger obligations in relation to risk assessment in the workplace for this stuff, but it's not simply about making people happy or trying to remove stress from the workplace, because that would be an impossibility.
That's right.
Okay. And some quick tips. Yeah, these are your favourite tips, aren't they?
Practical tips to bring it all together. So risk management of psychosocial hazards will require more than one control. If that's the only thing you take away from this section, take that one. We want to make sure that you have a broader selection of control measures when you're doing this.
But don't kill yourself and create an eggshell culture.
Just have a look at that. Have a look at that slide. See if
Purist
they're relevant.
versus it's common sense. Yes, there we go.
And for businesses that are operating nationally, consider streamlining your approach to psychosocial risk management, because there are some differences. So what we suggest is pegging it to the highest one, which is currently Queensland. So keep the hierarchy of controls in your system. There's additional considerations regarding psychosocial hazards, but also sexual harassment, sex or gender-based harassment.
Anything else?
No, that'll do.
You'll do? You
That'll
happy
do.
with that? Good, okay. Know your codes. Know your codes.
What is a code, Nigel?
Well, what is code?
What is a code?
It's a very, pleasingly, since I was in short pants, the regulator in all states and territories has from time to time created what were described as codes of practice. And a code of practice might be occupation-based, it could be industry-based, it could be activity-based, it could be about electrical work, it could be about high-voltage work. Got an example up there, sexual and gender-based harassment. So it could be topical, could be industry-based, could be sub-industry or sector-based. And the real issue about the codes is they were normally quite useful. Some of those codes were huge. I think some of them are over 100 pages long.
Yeah, some still are quite huge.
Some still are quite big. Not surprisingly, electrical safety is quite big. Probably the average 25, 30 pages long. Yeah. Lots of diagrams though. Don't think that it's all just packed in at 8 font and single space. I think the real issue is that for most of my life, those codes largely were guidance-based. That's changed, and I'll let you talk about how it's changed in a minute. The fact that it's changed probably is slightly academic, because historically, if you hadn't followed the code, you'd probably get hit over the head by the regulator if there was an incident,
that's right,
an injury or whatever. The first thing they would say is, well, did you know about the code? If you said no, they'd hit you over the head of that if there was prosecution. If you did know about it and you said, well, we didn't follow it, they'd hit you over the head with that anyway. So originally guidance, but that's all changing.
Yeah, so Queensland took the lead in this, in establishing a duty for businesses. If there is an approved code in your state, you have to comply with it. Unless you find a standard that's equivalent or higher, then go for gold. That was the way. New South Wales has very recently followed suit with Queensland. Just in June, the law was passed. Now, its start date's TBA.
We haven't got it yet, have we?
But it has been approved. It is going to happen. So soon in New South Wales, you will have the same duty, that if there is an approved code of practice, like the two you see on the screen there, you have to comply with it. So it's very important to know about your codes now more than ever.
And I think you said earlier, and we got it up there, that there actually is a psychosocial code now as well.
That's right, there's two. So you have the Managing Psychosocial Hazards at Work in New South Wales and all the jurisdictions, and then in some, but particularly New South Wales, we also have the Sexual and Gender-Based Harassment Code of Practice. So that should be read in conjunction, because that's a specific psychosocial hazard.
If you've not seen them before and you're struggling with them, give you a call. You can have a chat about them. What I would say is if you need to find them, go to the regulator's site. They're all comfortably housed. I always forget which drop-down menu it is now. Bear with me. I think it's on the far right. I can't quite remember.
If you find that too complex, Google's amazing.
Yeah,
Codes of practice, safety in your state.
You could even use AI, couldn't you? I mean, you could actually use AI. It'll get you there. But understand that there is this ongoing trend. One, even where they are guidance material, they really come home in a prosecution to almost be mandatory. And understand that we've now got 2 states moving, or one moved and one in the process of moving to mandating. And I suspect that's a trend that's going to develop as time goes by over the next few years.
Yes.
Not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I think it's a good thing. After seeing...
There's some good practical stuff in the codes.
One, they're very helpful.
Yeah, they are.
But after having seen how the prosecutors use them in court proceedings, the more people know they need to have regard to them, the better. And
what I would say about codes is that that if you're a safety expert, easy to digest, easy to read. If you're not, you'll just be overwhelmed by it straight away. I think if you are struggling, that's where you might get a little bit of advice. But they probably do give you some really good sort of tips and tricks around the risk management piece, hazard identification and so forth, and controls. So they're very, very useful. But yeah, world is changing. Which I think we just said, didn't we?
We covered that.
How about that? Oh look, we've even put an inquiry. If you do want to inquire about codes, just drop us an email. That'd be great. Now I was surprised this came onto the agenda, but anyway, it's come on. Hazard identification and notification. I think this came from some of our small business clients more than anybody else, and because I think it was phrased in, if I'm a small business, do I still have to identify hazards? Do I still have to have a reporting system? If you're a big business, you're probably doing this brilliantly already, but for the small and medium business, I might have a little chat. The first thing that needs to be said is that if you are operating a business, you do need to be progressively trying to identify work health and safety hazards. You need a process of reporting and recording hazards, and you also need a process of rectification. I'm sorry, this doesn't apply to small business. You'll need to be doing that. I'll give my coffee. Can I give my coffee shop example quickly? Because we talked about it earlier. Local coffee shop. The owners actually sold the coffee shop a few years ago now, but I went down there and started having a chat about safety in this coffee shop, and he went, "Oh, look, this is way beyond me. I can't do this." And I won't give his name. Lovely person. And I said, "That's not true." And I said, "Let's do it a simple way. In your coffee shop, where are you more likely than not to get hurt?" And he said, "Oh, that's easy." And the first thing he said was the fryer. I said, "Okay, so that's your number one hazard." He said, "Probably the fryer." I said, "Oh, we'll put that down there." "What's the next one?" "Oh, probably the grill." "Okay, we'll put that down there." "What's your third one?" He said, "Oh, you can sometimes burn yourself on the coffee machine." I said, "Okay, let's put it down." I said, "You're doing very well so far." I said, "All right, well, so let's go and have a look at the fryer. What's the hazard? It's open. There's no top on it. If somebody slipped, they could fall in and put their hand in the fryer. Very serious." "So what do we need?" He said, "We need a non-slip mat in the kitchen." I said, "Brilliant." I said, "Have we got one?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, we're going to go and get one, aren't we?" And then we just walked through that, and I just said to him right at the end of it, I said, "Look, this is great. You've done it. Well done. Now, perhaps what you might now do just to make this a little bit better is educate your staff so that if they can identify trip hazard, slip hazards, or anything that might present danger, that they come and report it to you, and you just put it in your diary." And he looked at me and he goes, "Is that all I need to do?" And I said, "I tell you now, if you have a serious incident in your coffee shop and you've done that, they'll keep you probably from being prosecuted because you've done, for a business of your size, all things reasonably practicable." And I think that was a question from small business. It doesn't mean you got to have an elaborate computer system where you identify hazards and whatever. And the one thing you might do, and they can grab this from us if they need it, is I have my famous trusty, brought some kit with me today, I can't help it. I have my famous hazard prompt list. Because if you're not used to looking for hazards, falls from heights, falls at same level, vibration, noise, I've always used something like that. We've got one. If you want to have a look at ours, you're more than welcome to have a look at it. I think that probably explains the Saul Boozer's question about hazard identification. Do you want to add anything? Have I dropped the ball on anything?
No, the key thing there is how you said safety doesn't have to be reserved for super complex procedures. You can make it simple and what works for you.
Yeah.
I think that was great.
Yeah, okay, good. Incident response plan. I was going to teach you so you can go, but...
Now, this was the slide you wanted. Tell the people about the stages of incident response. There's a lot going on.
In any world, be you BHP or you be my coffee shop, if you do have an incident, now, bear in mind, an incident could be as simple as a near miss. It could be that somebody actually needs some first aid. It could be more serious that, and I actually need to immediately ring the ambulance and get them off to hospital. But we're talking about a safety incident that either creates harm or gives rise to the potential for harm. And I just wanted to go through a couple of points, and then we might drop in a little bit about investigations as well. We might have a little bit of a chat. The first thing is always what do you immediately do? And I've never seen a safety management system that says anything other than this. And the first thing is, can you please deal with the person who's hurt? And even if they're not hurt, can you please deal with them anyway? Because it might well be that they've had a hell of a fright. And that's as troubling. In corporate life, I can remember a very serious near miss once where I thought the person was entirely fine, only to find out they'd actually gone into shock, which is a pretty dangerous state to get into. The first question is, do you need to actually look after the person? If appropriate, as we say there, please isolate the site. Please do, if somebody puts their hand in the fryer, you're closed for the day. All right, you just close for the day. It's as simple as that. It's a serious incident. They're off to the hospital. You need to close for the day because the odds are you're going to be ringing the regulator, and the odds are the regulator might very well send somebody around there this afternoon. So just think long and hard about, do I need to actually isolate the site? I agree that's going to be inconvenient, but that's the way life is. Do you need to preserve it?
Well, I think there's two answers to that question. So preserving the incident site is sometimes mandatory.
Yep.
And that's when we're talking about what we'll call a notifiable incident. So when there's a death, when someone's seriously injured or there's a serious illness.
There's some funky rules about notifiable incidents, isn't there?
Yes, there are. So notifiable incidents, I'm hesitant because we could talk all day about them, but there's broadly three categories of them. You got your
there's one we recently found out about we didn't know about. We have to admit that.
You didn't know about it. You knew about it. Don't bring me down.
I didn't know about it.
So there's some different definitions across the state. So in WA, they have an additional requirement.
So let's just start. So if there's a fatality,
yep,
no argument.
That's a notifiable incident.
If there's a serious injury which occasions putting somebody in an ambulance, no argument.
No argument.
Let's say that somebody's fallen and they've broken a finger, but they're a tough big rugby player and they're okay to go home. Reportable incident?
Broken finger?
Yeah.
Well, it's getting there.
We're getting close.
I think that's on the cusp.
We're getting close. And then we get to the funky Western Australian one, which is you've been...
So it's still a form of that serious injury. They've just had an additional consideration when a medical professional has said, as a result of this injury, you will require 10 days absent from work.
So if I break my finger at work, in and of itself, that might not be a reportable incident. No, I'd agree with that, by the way. Obviously, if you severed part of your finger, I think that's reportable straight away. That would be a partial amputation. That's clearly going to be reportable. But in WA, if I broke my finger at work, maybe I fractured it rather than broke it, and because I've got hurt feelings, I have to have 10 days off because of that. That then becomes a reportable incident. If
the medical professional's opinion is that's what is required. So it's not a subjective assessment by the worker, but their doctor.
Okay.
And then, of course, there's a dangerous incident, just to round it off. So there could be a collapse, a fall, an explosion, things of that nature. They're notifiable. So not every incident requires you to go to the safety regulator. I think that's important make clear.
I think some of them are obvious. Some of them you might want to give us a call and have a chat about. We've had clients ring us frequently and say, this looks like a grey zone, what do I do? And the big one there, if there is a fatality, please call the police.
Yes.
They'll need to be on the scene immediately. And if there is a fatality, you cannot disturb the site in any way, shape or form. And please follow whatever instructions the police tell you. If you do notify the regulator, you can do that by phone or you can do it by email.
In some jurisdictions, they require you to do it in a particular way. There's, in New South Wales, call by phone.
Yes, yeah.
The quickest and fastest way is how you're meant to do it in New South Wales. In some of the different states, they triage it, but if it's a death or a fatality, call the regulator.
Cool. And the nature of response will be based on the severity and possibly whether or not the investigator lives near where the incident happened, which
they can rock up quickly.
I once had one rock up real quick. It's like I was on my way home. I don't know if that was convenient for you or for us. I'm not really sure. Look, what do you do in the short term? You're going to commence an investigation. And look, most people, and if I'm thinking about small businesses now, they'll go, geez, what's an investigation? So bear with me, I'm going to have a chat about that. Most large companies will have a detailed safety management system. They'll have something like this one. This is my incident investigation analysis standard for safety management. And they'll probably have what I call a triage of investigation protocol. So they'll probably have what they call a level 1 incident, which might be a near miss, and they'll conduct a fairly contained investigation for that. They might have a level 2 incident, which is far more serious, might involve lost time injury or whatever, and then they'll have an increased investigation process for that. And then at the most serious level 3, which might be a fatality or something like that, they'll probably adopt a slightly different investigation methodology, which is called ICAM, Incident Cause Analysis method, and probably there might be a question about privilege. So we'll talk more about that in a second. If you're a small business, you're going to look at that and go, I don't have the expertise to do that. So what I would probably say to you is, as I said to my coffee shop person, there's a famous part of incident investigation in the WHS world, which is called 5 whys. And ICAM's too far a reach, don't even go there. But if you're a small business, I'd want you to sit down. You can do it by yourself. It's better to do it with other people. It'd be if Bob put his hand in the fryer, I'd want you to sit down, probably with your staff, and actually sit down and say, right, we're going to ask why 5 times. So normally you would go, he's an idiot, human error, sorry. 1970, that might have been okay. It's not okay in 2025. He slipped. Okay, that's the first why. Why did he slip? He slipped because the mat on the floor wasn't of the right type. Fine. Why was the mat not the right type? Ask yourself why 5 times and you will more likely than not get to the root cause. So if you're a small business, think of an investigation just being that, all right? Now, if you're a bigger business and you're getting serious about it, might have external parties involved, let's just touch quickly on legal professional privilege because everybody gets this wrong. Do you want me to start?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll start. You can jump in. There is this misnomer in this country that the minute you ring a lawyer or a law firm, everything is privileged. That may or may not be the case. The substantial person for contacting that lawyer or law firm has to be for the receipt of legal advice. So, for instance, if you wanted to do an investigation under privilege and you rang us, you would want to do that before you've started anything. And you'd want to say to us, we actually want legal advice about our rights and obligations in this matter. And as part of that, we want you to undertake an investigation to help inform the provision of legal advice in relation to the matter.
And it's that latter bit that is bringing the steps we then take with respect to conducting that investigation into the privileged zone.
What you can't do is get 5 weeks into the process and go, shit, this would have been better if we'd done this under privilege. Let's get our lawyers to take it over. It's a nightmare.
And I can't retrospectively capture something under privilege either. It's not a good thing.
And just be conscious that you can get a law firm to do a lot of things that actually aren't about legal advice as well. You need to be very conscious of that. The other thing that I would say in the short term is, are you making your staff aware of what's occurred? Now, a lot of big businesses will do that from a toolbox. In my coffee shop example, I'd want to, the next day when the staff come back in, I'd be talking to them personally. Johnny's okay. This is what we're doing about it. Please, in the meantime, these are the steps we've put in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. But this whole question of how are you sharing the learnings? And then more importantly, later on in the medium or longer term, when you've done your investigation, you've got to the root cause, that's when you actually start to spread the learnings across the business so that hopefully this never happens again. That might inform how you retrain people, etc. And then, as you say right at the end of the slide, in the longer term, perhaps I need to go back and review my processes for risk management of that particular activity. Okay, guess what? In the coffee shop, I'm now going to put I'm going to get it changed so there's a red light so that people can see when it's actually on. And if I can't do that, I'm going to put a dirty great big sign up every time it's on so people understand. So in terms of incident response planning, that's what I probably want to drop in.
Now this...
I think I've just lost my seat. But that's
you dropped
okay.
in.
I've dropped in.
Whilst you recover, these slides to give you some questions about what you might think about...
That was a high-risk activity.
So best practice here would be to document your incident response plan. It can be simple as you like. Some bigger businesses might have a much more detailed, longer one, but here are some questions for you to think about.
There's mine. It could be simple, could be simple as that. Could be a table. Could be a
More
table.
words does not mean better.
No.
So don't fall into that trap. But these questions are just prompts. So, for example, how are incidents going to be responded to? And that's kind of speaking to what Nigel said, how for some incidents it might require a much more quick, truncated process. Others might need an investigation that's even briefed out to lawyers.
Do not get in the habit, if you're a medium to larger business, of investigating all safety incidents at the highest level. You'll spend an inordinate amount of money and time for very little return. You've really got to get that calibrated correctly.
And another thing to think about is that these can be very stressful situations, and these practical tips very much speak to it. By creating a document that sets out your plan, you kind of let people know what's the go when things go wrong.
And right at the bottom, please keep your records, because it's quite possible that you won't know whether or not the regulator's going to do anything for a reasonable period of time. So please keep all of your records. I've led investigations arising from fatalities. You are right, they are incredibly stressful things to get involved in, and very quickly people try and double guess exactly what's gone on. You've got to be quite rigorous in those situations. Consultation. You get to do this one, okay?
No, consultations.
So do I have to talk to everybody?
You don't have to talk to everyone, but don't suddenly close your ears yet. So who's got to be consulted? It's those that are affected by the safety issue you're looking at. Now, if you have a workforce of hundreds, thousands of employees and they're all affected by the issue, I'm not suggesting you have to have one-on-ones with all of them. That's a scenario where you might think, how can I get a cross-section of these workers?
Representative sample. Yeah.
So you might establish a committee. Now, it doesn't have to be a formal committee established under the Act. You can just create a committee yourself. It can be outside of the framework of the Act.
So the answer is, don't have to consult with everybody. Do I have to consult with HSRs?
100%. Now, if their work group is the affected group, you must consult with the HSR. But I know most HSRs want to be consulted about absolutely everything. If in doubt, consult with the HSR, I would say.
Particularly the ones who are also union delegates, but we probably won't go there. We'll leave that alone. When?
When does it need to happen? Well, if an HSR asks you, you definitely have to start it. But on the slide there, we have the 3 trigger points. Essentially, if you want a simple takeaway, if it's a safety issue, if it's going to affect health and safety, the obligation to consult's likely there. And
I always get frustrated. I mean, my joke about HSRs who are delegates is problematic, because we've got some clients in workplaces who they're more delegate than HSR, and that is highly problematic. But in most workplaces, I find that most employees and HSRs take the role very seriously and want to be engaged in making the place safer, particularly in high-risk environments. There's no doubt about that. Practical tips for consultation. If you had to pick 2 or 3, what would you pick?
Keep a record of all the consultation you do. Now, why do I say that? Because when you get a random audit or inspection from Safe Work, they want to know. They want to see records of consultation or what you're doing in this space.
Yep.
much easier if you have a record of it all. And another thing I'd say is review your current methods of consultation, because whilst they said it's good to get a cross-section of the workforce, if you're choosing a method that doesn't actually work with them, so you have a lot of truck drivers, for example, when you're choosing to email all of the material, that might not be the most effective
it's okay, because when
way.
they're at the traffic lights, they read the emails on their phones, it's fine.
So think about what's going to work with your workforce, because Safe Work, the WHS Act doesn't prescribe the exact method. Choose something that will make sense in your workforce.
And importantly, consultation isn't me sitting there saying, this is what I'm doing. Consultation is, I'm thinking of doing this, what are your thoughts?
Oh, you've just reminded me of the most fundamental point. In safety, we had a debate about this. In safety, consultation must happen before the decision's made, because workers need a genuine opportunity to give some feedback about what you're talking
whereas
about.
Whereas in an industrial world, you make a definite decision, then you consult.
Yes, it's very different. We're looking at different things there, so important to be aware of.
Good pickup, good pickup. Training and instruction, I'm going to let you have a crack.
Thank you. So very important that you provide information, training and instruction that's necessary to keep people safe in the workplace. But this is a situation, I might get you to click the slide one more time.
Happy to. Oh.
These are the questions I want you to ask about your material, because more words, the whole Bible of material, doesn't mean what you're providing is good. As Nigel said before, if it's hundreds and hundreds of pages long, there's a good chance your workers in the cafe are not going to be reading what you've put there. So it's not very suitable or adequate to the job.
And it's interesting you say that, because when I look back over my corporate life and involved in safety, you could nearly always pull off the shelf, or these days probably electronically, some pretty swanky work health and safety management system, either under the Australian standard or at least mapped to the Australian standard. When I think about it, the things that probably kept people safe would have been, one, the practice of doing a take 5 when they were in an environment they weren't used to. So particularly for truck drivers, they would get out of the truck and go, right, I'm just going to take 5 minutes, maybe it was 2 or 3. I'm going to look around me and see if there are any hazards I need to identify. And we used to give them a little prompt sheet for that as well. I suspect that at the higher end, particularly the job safety analysis and then the safe work procedures, particularly some of the higher end stuff, when I think about the sort of the hundreds of other pages, I'm not sure the hundreds of other pages in and of itself, important, had to have it, all of that, but you're right. The volume of material doesn't really necessarily make it. Just sitting down with your people in the coffee shop and saying, what are the 4 highest risks in this coffee shop, might actually be the most important thing, and then having a couple of check sheets.
And it's a good point to make. We recommend documents because that helps protect you and show.
And we love writing them.
And it helps us. It helps you demonstrate what you're doing in this space. So that's why we always recommend documents. But what you're saying to the workers, those conversations in those meetings, training sessions, invaluable, and it's meeting this obligation. And something I would also say, in the same way where I say more words doesn't mean better, less words and pictures can be fantastic in this space.
Yeah, it's true. And be very sensitive, and I'm also careful how I say this, but statistically in Australia, the average blue-collar reading age is year 8, and the average middle manager reading age is year 11. And you're absolutely right. Writing something that is written for the executive general manager probably is not particularly accessible for keeping people safe at most levels in your business. So think about that. Need to do it.
Yes.
Need to make sure it's absorbed and relevant. But again, depending on the size of your business, can look very different, small to big.
That's right.
And some quick practical tips, which I think, I'm just having a quick look. Yeah, I think you've
covered them.
You've covered them, which is excellent. We've got 15 minutes left. So I know I'm desperate to talk about item number 10, but we can't go any further. We were actually asked to talk about review. Like, how often do you review what you do? And is it important? Do we set and forget?
Stop my heart when you say that.
Stop my beating heart.
Never set and forget. And if you have a system of review for your policies, for your control measures, this demonstrates you're not in that territory, which is a very worrisome territory to be in for safety compliance.
And just jump ahead. Regularly.
Now I know why you're looking at me. You're saying, what is regularly?
Well, I'll answer it.
We did receive a question saying, how often should you have the toolbox talks? Because people want to know what's regular enough.
Well, when it comes to those sorts of things, I would say that if you're transferring learnings and immediate learnings, I would think that you're doing that within the week. I would say that if you've got a written system, you've got written documentation and you've got written procedures and whatever, I would be quite unhappy at least every 2 years. Yep. Now, sometimes maybe for some of that it could be 3, but I would say probably as a benchmark 2. And again, when you talk about review, you're looking at things like, well, okay, now the codes, we now actually have to comply with the codes. How does that fit in with what we do? When you're looking at review, the most simple question about review is, and you've seen, we built a safety management system for a small business to test ourselves on this. The first question about review is, are these documents available in the workplace? And so review doesn't have to be, I'm going to go out and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars doing it, but review really has to be as much as, has anything changed? The next question is this still being used?
That's right.
And if it's not being used, what do I have to do to make sure it gets used? And that's what we mean by review. If you're doing that every couple of years, I'm happy. If you have a serious incident, then you would be looking at your processes, your procedures, what you've got in writing arising from that very serious incident to make sure that those processes and procedures, if they need to be adjusted, they're adjusted. And I think they were our very, very, very practical tips. You just put this in to bug me,
yes,
didn't you?
That's right, so the debate.
You put this in to bug me.
No, what we've seen, and particularly with the rise
this debate's been around for a long time.
It's been enlivened with all the psychosocial stuff and even the positive duty.
Well, I think it's been enlivened also, probably an increased focus in recent time about injury management, because there's always a debate about who's responsible for injury management out there in corporate life. You dropped me in this, didn't you? You really dropped me in.
And this is more of a concern and debate at the larger business level. But what are your thoughts?
What are my
tips
thoughts?
for everyone?
You dropped me in this. So look, I'll start with my moment of anecdote, and then we'll go forward. The day I got put in charge in corporate life of a very large safety team, my lack of safety credentials was met with, let's just say, a degree of scepticism. And yeah, I wasn't a novice. I mean, I'd done a lot of work in fatigue management. I'd done a lot of work in drugs and alcohol and a variety of other areas. But compared to them, I didn't have safety qualifications, so I was met with a great deal of scepticism. They were a good crew. They put me on probation. I was their GM. They put me on probation. They didn't like the fact I had HR in my title. Same reason. My answer to this debate is one. Be very, very careful if you create an HR silo and a WHS silo in your business and there is antagonism between the two groups. 2, they are both professional disciplines and they need to be respected. Please don't assume that because somebody has the title People and Culture General Manager that they are by definition a work health and safety person. I'll be honest, in corporate life, it probably took me a year and a half to actually earn their respect, and I read everything they threw at me, and I did everything they asked me to do to earn my safety team's respect. They don't cross over. I've never seen serious safety professionals make good HR managers, and I've never seen good HR managers make serious, as a general rule, but you will find some that can do it. And it's the same as the debate we have these days about the difference between HR and IR. I mean, the fact that you might have been looking after REM and benefits and development doesn't mean you know how to sit around a table with a union. So this debate has been going in corporate life for years. It'll keep going. I doubt we'll ever stop it. I would start with, please don't create a silo in your business, and if there is, address it. And be very mindful of the competence of the people in your safety teams and the competence of your people in your HR teams. The one thing I would say to what is your big business, don't try and save money by shoving safety under HR. If HR doesn't want it and is not competent to take it, be very mindful of that, because that can be quite a disaster. That'd be what I'd say.
And the only thing
you put me on the spot, didn't you?
The only thing I would add to that is that if you recognise there's this tension and confusion in your business at the leadership level, note that might be leading to confusion down the stream.
I'll guarantee you it is leading to confusion down the stream.
And this is where we're going to get issues of potential gaps in compliance, especially if workers don't know who to report certain incidences or issues to who. So it needs to be resolved if there's this dilemma.
I agree. It's not always there, but it is something to be vigilant about. I'm pleased you raised it. I know you thought you'd have a crack at me with that, but you probably got me in trouble with half the audience. I probably have. Working from home. Come on, we're working from home.
No, it's a great question.
I've been in the financial review last week on this. I was on Sky News.
Might not delve too deep into that.
Into that.
But we received a question from someone that has an entirely remote workforce now. So a lot of people listening in will have a hybrid model. That's become quite standard almost since COVID. Some are trying to move completely away from it.
We need to start with this proposition that for the great majority of people working in Australia, they don't ever get to work from home, because guess what? They're nurses, they're aged care workers, they're truck drivers, they're quarry workers. So we always just be careful about. There is a privilege in this.
When my comments reflected office work life, I make that very clear.
That's right. So you've started this last conversation about psychological hazards, but I actually want to get onto the whole question about how you actually manage when somebody's working home. But is there a reason why you wanted to start on psychological hazards?
Oh, I brought it back because when someone's in a remote or isolated environment, that's recognised as a psychological hazard in itself.
In and of itself.
Because that isolation, if you do nothing about it, could lead someone to develop, for example, depression. They could get psychological harm from that work design.
So the point about this is that we start with the proposition that there's a distinction between what we would call a fully remote worker and somebody who might be allowed to work from home a day a week or something like that. There's actually a different set of considerations, because with the fully remote worker, you're right, it's not just are they going to fall over and trip or whatever else. It is they are isolated.
And that's where we also trigger that duty you see at the bottom there, that if you have workers that are remote or isolated, a duty that applies to the business is to provide a system of work that includes effective communication with that worker. If they're entirely remote, that's a very important consideration.
Now, we have remote workers in ABLA. We've played with it, and we've done it on a case-by-case basis, because the person, for a variety of personal reasons, wanted to leave Sydney, or I think they all left from Sydney, and I wasn't prepared to lose them. They were that important. But that last point's an interesting one, because we've mandated certain days to return to the office or be in one of our offices, if not the Sydney office, then Newcastle or Melbourne or whatever. And we have regular, even though I'm not a fan of them, as you know, we have very regular whole of teams gatherings as well. So the first starting point is remote worker, higher level of consideration than simply you and I might work from home this Friday. I won't be, by the way. I don't know if you will be. I won't be, but anyway. Now, come on.
He's looking at me because
now we're talking about you working from home on Friday. Come on.
We had a good debate about this topic as well, about, well, what's a business to do? You have someone working in their home. What's the limit? What's the line? What do you have to do? Well, we've got some bare minimums on the slide there for you, which is one, you have to provide information on how they can set up a safe work environment. So the ergonomic setup, you see the little picture on the slide there, you could provide them information very similar to that.
I'm probably sitting badly already. I should.
So you're giving them information so they can work safely in their home environment, which is hopefully, ideally, a designated zone. That'll be included in the guidelines you provide them, but they may or may not.
Do you think I have to do an inspection?
That is crossing a line, I would say, in many almost all circumstances.
We've got some clients who've actually required it. I'm not there yet. But I agree with you. I think you have to be very clear about what is the expected work environment they're going to be working in. Now, let's ask this question: do you have to give them the kit?
Now, what are you including in
how about
the
the
kit?
chair? How about the chair?
Now, it's an interesting argument. So I haven't seen too many businesses get trapped or undone for not providing them their chair. And I think that's because it's, again, for most businesses, going a bit too far, because this, again, is someone's home environment.
It's their home environment.
And that's a key reminder. When you do not control their home environment, your obligation is to provide them information to keep them safe whilst they're working, not dictate how they should, the style and decor of their home environment. But it's an interesting point, because if you're a much larger business and you're well resourced, there could be an argument that maybe it's something you should invest in or could invest in, something to think about. But a more important question is, if you have knowledge about, say, a worker has a particular condition and they've disclosed that to you.
I think even put WHS aside, I think from a workers' comp perspective, that would be a very smart move to make. If I'm asking Nigel to go and work from home and I know he's got a back issue, which is why I've got a specialist chair at work, you're just asking for trouble if you let him work from home and you don't actually facilitate him having a specialist chair.
And it's good to bring workers' comp into this point too, because if someone's injured at home during their work hours, that of course can be a workers' comp.
We will talk about that before we finish, because I've got a very passionate view about that. But and this kind of gets us back into this issue of then hazards and incidents, because I'm a strong believer that employees need to be informed and educated to understand how to identify hazards while they're working at home. You know, because if you think about it, if I walked around my house today, I guarantee you, I did this the other day, by the way. My stairs are a trip hazard. They actually are a trip hazard. My wife's actually, I think people know my wife's fallen down the stairs before. I've slipped a couple of times as well, because it's such an old house, they're quite narrow. But if you had a house littered with children's toys, so just think long and hard about what are you doing to at least inform the employee about identifying potential hazards and rectifying them in the home while they are actually at work. I think most people can do that at some level. I would say that. Then the next thing is, please don't forget as well, if the person is working at home and an incident occurs, they still need to consider it and still need to potentially report it.
Yes, and that's something you might have to have conversations with and remind them about, because there will be a tendency to think it's no longer part of work, it's in my home, I don't need to raise it. We definitely want to encourage that communication.
And the great challenge about the whole working from home and the safety issue is that when you're at home, I suspect that you will have your what I call domestic sense of risk tolerance as opposed to your work sense of risk tolerance. When I was in corporate life, we had rules about when people went home and cut the lawn. We actually had rules that said if you're going to home and mow your own lawn, you have to wear earmuffs, you have to wear steel cap boots. We had these rules, and we had rules about using ladders at home. And people originally thought, oh, this is a bit cute, it's a bit of an invasion. But the message got home to them after a while, which, safety doesn't end at the workplace, and you need to be in a safety mindset all the time. I'm of an age where apparently 50% of domestic accidents occur when you're my age and you're a male, falling off ladders. So we used to have a rule when I was in corporate life that if you're going to climb up a ladder, you had to have be two people, had to be somebody holding it. There's a lot to think in this area. If you are increasingly concerned about what your people at home are or aren't doing, I'd probably say give us a call, because again, you're right, it will be contextual. It will change differently depending on how big or small your business is, what level of resources you've got available, because it's all about what is reasonably practicable for you to do. And obviously, on a broader front, something that's here to stay in some way. We've got the Clark's case that Lewis Hitso is running coming up about trying to free up the Clark's Award to actually reflect people self-selecting how to work when they're at home.
And of course we have Victoria making some noise in this space as well.
Why doesn't the Victorian government just look after the public servants and leave the private sector alone? But that'll probably be an argument for another day. And then lastly, just some very quick tips. As you said, probably the first one, if nothing, some very simple safety guidelines for your people when they are remote or working from home. And as we said already, if they are truly remote, think longer and harder about that, because I think that's more important. I can't help but finish by making 3 comments quickly. If your workforce is totally remote, don't know why you're not subcontracting, but that's mean and horrible. I don't. And I suspect there'll probably be a long debate in the next little while about the role of workers' comp when people are working home, possibly even the role of WHS laws when people are working home as well, because they don't really fit real well together at the moment, do they?
Oh, we have divergent views on this. We're very divergent views.
Oh, well, we'll see.
No time.
We'll see how we go with that. So look, shameless plug. Lots of resources at ABLA if you want some help. We've actually built a small business safety management system. Now, it's not for a micro business, don't get me wrong. It's not a micro business. We built a small business safety management system. We are running constantly workshops and training of managers, particularly senior leaders, on risk management, psychosocial hazards, officers' duties. Talk to a lot of boards about their duties as well. Policies and procedures if you want them. We've got some sensational toolkits, sexual harassment toolkit, and in particular our psychosocial toolkit. Do we have a picture of it?
Yeah.
I thought we had a picture of it. Sexual harassment toolkit's done really, really well. That's about implementing positive duty obligations in your workplace. And the psychosocial hazard toolkit, I'm going to say it's good because we do it right, but if you were to actually invest in anything this year in this space, I'd say if you want to get ahead in the psychosocial space, invest in this. It's worth it. Now, you can't say anything because you helped write it and design it, so you're out straight away. Now, I know that we didn't answer any questions specifically, but we were observing the questions as we went, and hopefully we've answered most of the questions. That was fun.
Yeah. Got a couple jokes in.
We've got a couple of jokes in, hopefully at my expense. I think the best way to end this will be to say stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.